Yeah, they all have different.
So we're gonna get going here. You guys,
Understood.
yeah, we're gonna get going. And John, thanks for that overview. As a technologist in the room, I would actually completely echo your sentiment that it's around the story, and that there are common narratives for how we as human beings relate to one another. And using that as a basis, how do you augment that to make it relevant and timely to today? And as well, consumers or human beings also are looking for novelty, so that's the other opportunity. You could take an enduring story and repurpose it to make it relevant. But I'm very much in the same camp that it is about the story. And on that point, we're really fortunate today to have, in addition to John, two very prominent, successful directors who are very much focused on the story across many different types of media. And to John's left, we have Danny Leiner, who has directed a number of TV shows as well as movies. And on the movie side, Dude, Where's My Car? And Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And I wanted to point that out because my daughter, Olivia, wanted to say hello, although you've never met her. But she's a fan of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Hello, Olivia.
So if that's on tape, I'll point that to her. And then to Danny's left is Gil Nevo, who has won an Emmy as being part of directing, producing animation for South Park. And my son, when I mentioned to him that I'd be talking to you, well, Austin actually said not to say hello. He said, "Can you ask him how to help get me, his dad, to respect my authority?" And so, nice. And don't answer that because I might have to pay attention. So tonight's discussion, this fireside chat, is around two themes. The enduring theme that's always been true about media, and I know all of you relate to this aspect, and that is the weight between content and distribution. And content is king because any great content will ultimately attract an audience, but distribution is damn important. And what's highly relevant today is that with the emergence of technology and all of these trends, consumers' expectations have moved from a lean-back experience in very traditional formalized channels to a demand of wanting content at any time, any place, on any type of device. And that's really changed the way for how content needs to be produced. And so what I really wanted to do is dig into what those trends mean to content directors, content producers, and maybe I'll start on my far left. Gil, would love to hear how, perhaps when you think about these emerging interactive trends, what strikes you most about how you personally interact with media as a result of all these trends, and how might that be different from, say, 7 to 10 years ago for you?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, because I've been made fun of being on my phone all day long and watching videos by my friends, I think we are, because of that access, we are always consuming this media. It's not just a prime time thing anymore. And I think the word that John used was democratization, and I actually love it. I think it's awesome. There's more media being created by more people. There are more stories being told. There are more connections out there, more emotion, and so I think it's a beautiful thing. And one of the things about interactive media that I wonder, and it's just a question that I'm going to raise, is everybody thinks that interactive media is like the next step, and in a way it is, but at the same time, do you always want to be interacting with the media? Sometimes don't you just want to sit back and not interact with the media? You want it to just play in front of your face and just sit back and do nothing. So I think that it's one channel. It's not like everything's going in one direction. It's a one singular sort of channel of where things are going, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Gil, with that comment, it also highlights a very important question that hasn't been asked or defined, and that is, how do you think about what interactivity means? And maybe, Danny, I'll move to you. When you think about interactivity, it could relate to interacting with the media. It could be just being able to program for yourself with media to consume. What strikes you when you think about interactive TV or interactive media, and what's important to you about that topic?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really, for me,
it's about consumption and how you do it and that thing. In terms of actual interactive media, other than gaming, in terms of TV and content, I would echo what these guys are saying. I think like people want, when I've seen, John touched on a little bit, like people, you could come up with your own endings and you could, create the story. I think people, tend to want, at least in that part of their entertainment, they like an assured hand or someone telling a story that they're able to like lose themselves in. So I think it's more about how you view it, and at this point, whether that could change, and I feel like, gaming is more where that really takes off, where you are creating your own realities and that. I feel like, almost because of that, people also really crave that kind of storytelling that's been going on forever, that they can sit back and, so it's where they catch it. And also, it's all the other stuff around it, that the content created that is potentially more interactive of, ancillary stuff that's around the show or whatever. So that's my, I guess I don't really see, I don't see it that much in the traditional storytelling convention.
And Danny, you're producing or you're directing a Hulu show called We Got Next. How have you approached that direction of that with respect to it being on Hulu? For example, I'm sure you have a different point of view for how long the episode length should be.
Actually, no. I mean, in that case, it's dictated by Hulu.
Oh, okay.
And they wanted, a relatively, because they wanted, 22, 25. It was a little looser than, networks, time, demands. But because they want to seek a distribution, after they air it on Hulu to foreign sales, so they want to keep it in, quantity of time that they can sell, and that makes sense. My experience with Hulu was just the budget was way lower because of that was their model. Than certainly network and cable and other outlets. So we shot that because of that. So it changed the production. The idea, the conception was to do the show. Basically, it's a show about guys who hang out at a gym and pick up basketball, and then they discuss their girlfriends, their wives, and but the way so that's the comedy. The show's a comedy, and so we every week we go to them at the gym, and so the conceit of the show was based on the budget, which was that most of the stuff just took place in this gym. So in terms, we rented a gym, in Glendale, and not Arizona, but in California, outside Los Angeles, and we just we shot almost all the show there, and we also block shot it. So we shot, instead of shooting, an episode a week, for 5 days, 3 or 4, 5, 6 days, we shot, we just shot the whole season in basically, a few weeks right in a row, and we cross-shot a lot of the stuff, which is very tricky to do. So the Hulu, the element of it being at Hulu really was affected by budget, and the conception of it was based on that.
Now, Gil, you have a studio or a company that's looking to innovate by bringing in different types of media as well as repurpose it appropriately for the different channels. How would you go about producing or directing a show differently today than you might have, say, 7 to 10 years ago?
I'm not really sure what the answer to that would be. I think mostly there'd be similarities.
Okay.
But I think that, a point I want to touch on about interactive TV in general is that we already have interactive entertainment. And like YouTube, for example, and I'm sure you guys are watching YouTube, that is actually a very, very interactive medium. And it's not in that the technological, like gaming sort of interaction where you're necessarily, they have that too, where you're actually playing a role in the narrative. But with all the comments and the cross-pollination of videos that creators are doing, like with different YouTube networks that are popping up, like, you got Jash and you got all these, sort of YouTube conglomerates now. I just feel like interactive, like, it's not the sort of sexy, interactive TV TV that we all kind of imagine, like, hey, we're in the scene, but it is interactive. I mean, the creators on YouTube that are producing shows, twice a week or daily or once every couple of weeks, they're interacting with their audience and creating shows on a weekly basis based on that feedback. So there's a really strong interactive element to that medium in general. So yeah, I mean, YouTube in itself is just completely changing the face of entertainment, in my opinion, in a lot of respects, because it is just immediately accessible and quick, it's fast. It really lives in the time that we live technologically and with people's like attention span, etc.
And I have a question for all of you, and that is, Gil, you had mentioned a little bit earlier about when I was, I guess, more or less agreeing with what John ultimately talked about, which is content is king. You had rightly pointed out, well, sure, but there's also infinite number of channels. So distribution really matters a damn lot, because you may have infinite supply of great content, but if there's infinite demand spread across infinite squared number of channels, no piece of content will get any eyeballs. So how do you solve that? So love to hear your thoughts for talking about that distribution challenge in the face of YouTube, in the face of the internet, the face of mobile and tablet. I don't know if anyone had a point of view you want to share.
I guess my first, I'm not the expert in this, so it's just my, what I am seeing as far as like online video, is that creators, especially on YouTube, etc., they're getting together to form their own networks. It's kind of like this organic petri dish of creativity that is, where cells are just kind of binding with each other and creating these really small niche networks. For example, my company just did a few videos for a company called Big Frame. They're kind of like Maker and Machinima. They're these sort of conglomerates. They're agents. Their business model is varied. It's owning content. It's managing YouTube talent. And a lot of YouTube talent, becoming celebrities now. And what's interesting is within that sphere, a lot of artists are just kind of naturally getting together and creating these little bubbles that speak to these very tiny demographics, but the audience is really strong, and as far as advertising data is concerned, you know exactly who you're talking to. You know the ages, you know their interests. They're interested in Harry Potter and making origami, and I mean, literally that is like the niche. And so they're very powerful. It's a very powerful thing, because I think for advertisers it's great because they're going directly to people who are buying their product. For example, Machinima, it's like this network for, you just know who you're talking to. So I think that sort of thing is interesting to see. It's almost like an organic process.
And John, would you recommend to the entrepreneurs out here who are looking to build out audiences that, just like with CW, you start out with a niche segment and then build out from that? And if that's the case, what would be some tactics you would suggest make sense for how do you think through what are subsequent segments to go after your core?
Well, I do agree with starting with a particular target. Ultimately, in terms of a big picture, I think technology will always win out, and the consumer always wins. There's a great story about Bill Paley, who owned the CBS radio network. His parents bought it for him. He was a rich guy. And he was on vacation.
So don't take money from him.
His parents bought him a radio network. And then TV was invented. Actually, TV was invented here in San Francisco on Green Street. But TV was invented, and Bill Paley did everything in his power to kill television, thinking it would hurt his radio business. You just don't know where things are going to go in life. Bill Paley, had he killed television, wouldn't have had the CBS television network, clearly. And so I think technology and consumers, they ultimately win. And you can't bet against technology, but I think if you're going to get into the business and you want to find a approach, I think you have to have a very specific target. Now, the interesting thing was when we started the WB, it was going to be a network to outfox Fox. We're going to be edgier than Fox, raunchier than Fox, and we found out the FCC had other ideas. So we immediately went from the edgier network to the place. This was like one day we're edgier than Fox, then we become the the place where the WB, the place where America's families watch television together. we were like a drunken sailor. We were here, we were there, and then we found Dawson's Creek, and we became the Teen Network, and there we are. That was our plan. So a lot of us left.
But I think it takes a lot of searching and like a lot of making mistakes. You know, you don't always know creatively where things are going to land. You just don't know.
You don't know. You know, there's so many unknowns.
Yeah.
You know that it's just really imponderable. You got all these smart people, and it's just like, you know, the truism. You know, William Goldman. Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
It's just like fate and luck and happenstance and a lot of planning and then kind of rejiggering, and it's just not like a vector going across a Cartesian plane. There's zigs and zags all over the place, and in the tech business and the television business, it's just wild that anything gets done. You know.
And I think you were talking about that earlier when we were talking about you know how you can do all the numbers, you can crunch all the numbers and you know really intellectualize it, but what speaks to people's emotions at that minute changes. You know, it changes from minute to minute, from hour to hour, from day to day. And so it is a big process, as with all art, of throwing something against the wall and seeing if it sticks. You know, you just have to go out there, do it, and then you see. And, you know, it doesn't work, but then it becomes a little bit of a numbers game.
Yeah.
And Danny, you've written and directed and such. When you are in the ideation creative process, do you also match that with a demo in mind and the business aspects?